Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a tutorial on how to tone match your guitars. I did a video about how to edit your DI guitars to get like a different tone or shape your tone on this last video, and I had some questions about tone matching, so I want to do a follow-up video for you guys to share some processes you can do and try it yourself. So for this video, I'm going to dive in. We've got a project here you're going to see in Reaper, and I've got this sort of demo track here where I've written most of the guitars with MIDI. So this might be one scenario why you'd want to do this. So the guitars were programmed with Odin 2, and I've done like a mix, and it's sort of got like a shaped sound, and I want to go in and record the real guitars, but I don't want to like have to recreate that tone completely. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can match the DI and some of the actual guitar tones as well. So we're going to go through that. I'm going to show you the demo song here, and I'm going to show you the process of going into your DAW and tone matching it from, say, Odin 2 or any other sort of source and matching your guitars to it. So let's dive in and check it out here. All right, so that's the session that we're working with here today. And you can see here, I've got Odin sort of all programmed out into MIDI. And the riff that I re-recorded that I started working on here is this riff here, which is this chorus riff, which on its own, it sounds like this. So that's the riff that we're going to be comparing here and tone matching the DI. So what you want to do is basically, I like to open up a new project in Reaper. I just open up a second file here, and just to make it a bit easier so it's not everything on screen here. So what I've got here is, this will be part of the session here that we're going to demonstrate. So this is the DI here that I've re-recorded, and I've got Odin here that's printed out from the MIDI. But we're going to close that one here because I'm going to quickly demonstrate the final result, and then we'll walk through step by step how to do it. So this group here, this is the tone matched version that I finished on here. This is Odin on its own with just the DI. So I'm going to bypass anything I have on here. So I've just got the same Fortin nameless amp here. So I'm going to bypass the effects here. So it's just the DI signal. And then I've got my guitar here. Same thing, I'm going to bypass the amp that I've got on it, and we'll do a comparison. So first up, here's the Odin DI just on its own. So this is the guitar tone I recorded, and it is pitched down 2 semitones because I did record it in drop A. So I had to pitch shift it down 2 semitones here, but this is the DI just on its own with nothing on it. You can see, I think mine that I recorded had a bit more sort of low end, and they're really dead strings as well. So I need to change them. And that's one thing you can do as well. A little trick to bring some life back in your guitar is, if you've got a really nice DI, you can sort of put that EQ curve on it and it will kind of brighten it up there. But best thing is to have new strings. But yeah, I wanted to use some dead strings in this example here. So this EQ is the tone match for the DI here. And there's some points here you want to kind of like audition them. I'll go through how to do that here, but it will kind of match all different points on the intensity of the tone match. But that's the setting I had here to kind of match it here. So we're going to turn these all on. So you're going to see we've got the EQ here. We've also got the amp, which I'll turn off for now so we can just hear the DI comparison. And I've also got another EQ here where I just did some slight notches from the amp just to kind of like, there was a bit of honkiness and stuff. So just a little bit of cleanup there. You can see it's just very minimal, like a couple dB here and there. So with those two EQs here, I'm going to turn them on and off. So starting off, and I'll turn them on. In that DI, I can clearly hear there's a lot more twanginess, there's a lot more life in it. That was a direct tone match from Odin. So now I'll compare both Odin and the matched DI EQ curves, so you can hear a comparison going between the two. So I can hear that twangy characteristics come out of both of them, and that's what's really going to drive our amp sound. So now I'm going to put an amp on there and sort of hear the comparison with the amp, because that's what we want to hear, that final amp sound anyway. So first up, we'll start with Odin, and we'll go switch to our re-recorded track. So they seem pretty close there, so a pretty good match. And if I go left and right with the channels there, you probably hear them sort of mixed together as a whole unit. So together they sound pretty good as a unit, so it's pretty on point there. So now let's go through the process of actually how you can do it yourself, and the process of actually saving the DI and tone matching it and everything like that. So what you're going to need is you're going to need your tone, your reference tone that you want to use. It's going to be the raw tone that you're going to match to, and obviously your tone as well. So in red here, that's Odin, that's what we're going to be matching to, and blue is our recorded DI sound. Also, you're going to need a tone matching EQ, something like Pro Q3, which that's what I have here. So Pro Q3 is probably one of my favorite plugins. It's the one I use the most because EQ is so important. So it's worth the money on the spend, but there are probably some free ones that might be able to do something similar. I'm not sure if Ozone, they probably have some sort of EQ matching as well, but Pro Q3 is just a really great one that I like to use. But basically, that's all you're going to need. You're going to need an EQ that has tone matching abilities, your reference material sound, and the sound that you want to match to. So you want to put your tone matching EQ on the reference that you want to match to. So here I've got Odin as the DI, so I've just loaded up Pro Q3 there. And what you want to do is, so when it's playing, you want to go to this button here. It says pre plus post, and there's EQ match, and you want to click that. And you can see when you play it for a bit, it sort of saves the signal response of that curve that we're sort of playing there. So that little record button just pauses it. So if you want that snapshot, and it's best to get sort of a riff that has a bunch of different dynamics, just so you can kind of get the most broadness out of it. So, you know, some high notes, some low notes, but that's the curve that we've got here that we can use for our reference. And you go to this little arrow down here, and that's where you can save it. You want to save input as reference spectrum. So once you've saved it like that, it's going to be stored in whatever folder that you've made. So I've got Odin 2 DI there. So next step is we can turn this one off and remove it if we want. And we can go to our track that we want to match to, which is our guitar DI here. So now we've got Pro Q3 on our guitar DI. And all we need to do is we can go down to EQ match once again, and then hit the down arrow on reference. And we can go to the folder where we saved it, Odin 2 DI. And you can see it pops up here. Now, the next step you want to do is you want to go down here and go to this little A, which is auto gain. So it's just going to match the gain. So some things you might capture that might be a little bit hotter and a bit louder, and you don't want to sort of like, you don't want to increase those decibels. So you just want to kind of level it and match it. So best to always put that A on there. You can see when we press play, this big white line is what it wants the DI match to. The white line behind in the background, that's our original sound, and the red one is the reference that we want to match to. So you hit the match button here, and you can see it's followed that white line. And as you go with this sort of amount, which is sort of like, gives you an amount of how much you want to match it to. So you can go broader like that, where it's just big strokes that kind of match the sort of tone of it. And then you can go a bit more detailed if you like. So you can kind of pick what you think would be great. So, you know, obviously it's saying a lot up here, which makes sense in that higher frequency range because the strings are dead and it wants to match that higher frequency. And our tone was a bit more sort of heavy, lower end sort of sound. And you can see here, it's trying to scoop that low mid stuff out, which makes sense. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna go around about here. You don't wanna go too intricate, but you can hit finish and you can commit to it, and it does these strokes like this. And you can kind of, make it bigger and see how much it's doing on that sort of scale. And then you can audition them. That's the best thing to do, is sort of listen back and see which ones are useful. So like these sort of peaks, you're not sure if this extra move is worth it or not. You can sort of audition it and see if it makes sense. Sometimes they really do. They kind of remove a lot of harsh resonance and stuff like that. So it's best to audition them and see what they sound like. I'm just going to try that out, throw an amp on it and see how close they sound. So it matched the characteristics pretty well just from that DI match there. So what I'm hearing is it removes some of that sort of like low mid boominess, and there's still a bit of a work. I can hear some honkiness, which you could do some manual EQ and stuff like that as well, which that's why I added on the other one here. I did some manual EQ as well, where I sort of notched out some of that 700s, that sort of honky, weird sounding area in guitars. So there's still going to be some work, but you can do that. And you can also DI match the finished signal as well for any other instrument. So guitar, bass, anything like that, which I did do for this main song here. I just sort of did an experiment where I just did the drums. This here on the drums is actually an EQ match that I did the same process. But with this one here, when you do an EQ match and you're doing it from a session, you want to make sure that you put the EQ on the master after everything, after all your limiters and everything. So for example, you would put it here. So that's the mastering chain. And then you would load up Pro Q3 here at the very end. And then you would run through listening to the drums. For example, here, if I play on the drums. And that would be the curve that you would save. And the reason that you'd want to do that is because the one that you're matching it to, if it's from like a final stem or whatever the source was, it's going to have all that mastering, processing, and all the bus compression on it. So you want to match that final tone. If it's like an amp tone, it's going through a whole signal chain, you want to get to the end of the signal chain and sort of match it one for one there. So that's why you put it after the final limiter on the chain and everything like that, just so it gets that full characteristics. And once you've done that, then it'll be the same process on your drums there, where I just loaded up here. So you can actually hear what the drums I'll play are bypassing the tone match with the drums, and I'll put the EQ back on. So for that little EQ match there, I left it on because I liked how it sort of made the kicks a bit more chunkier and beefier, had a nice sound there. So that's how you can tone match your guitars and other instruments. Hopefully this video was helpful, and check out the other video as well if you want to get some other tips as well for editing your DIs. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.